The member for Hastings.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm happy to rise to make a contribution, and my contribution to this very important bill before us today. One of the longer titles, the Building Legislation Amendment Domestic Building Insurance New Offences Bill of 2023. Effectively, there are four main purposes to this bill: to amend the Domestic Building Contracts Act of 1995, to amend the Building Act of 1993, to provide the investigation and enforcement powers may be exercised in relation to the contravention of certain offences against the Domestic Building Contracts Act of 1995, and to provide that builders who are found guilty of contravening certain offences against the Domestic Building Contracts Act of 1995 may become ineligible for registration for a period of time. There are 19 clauses in this bill, and each have multiple additions within it. Oftentimes, the additions are the same. In fact, oftentimes the exact wording is used in multiple sections. And this is because of the issue which arose last year with the collapse of Porter Davis, and has continued on with other large and small building companies also collapsing. Put simply, some builders were taking people's deposits without taking insurance out on their builds, and therefore leaving their clients completely vulnerable if in the event the building company collapsed. As we know, many building companies have collapsed, sadly. I'd like to acknowledge that we are talking about real people, people who have lost their dream, their money and their future, people who now must begin again, and this is untenable. It's unfair, it's completely unnecessary, and to imagine the depths of despair that these people must feel is unfathomable. I would also like to acknowledge that there are thousands of builders and building companies around Australia that have not collapsed, that have always done the right thing, that take great pride in their workmanship, their customer service, companies that do make people's dreams come true. This bill will be the first part of a reform in the regulatory framework to make sure that people who've given money to their builders for domestic work will be protected. Because what has happened to not only Porter Davis customers but others is wrong. This will be achieved through inserting new offences with tough penalties and also providing strengthened powers for the Victorian Building Authority to enforce compliance with insurance requirements. The new offences are designed to stop builders like Porter Davis and other domestic volume builders from receiving money for a contract without holding the required insurance by inserting new penalties up to $96,000 per person, up to $420,000 for a company. These penalties are for the builders who knowingly or recklessly committed the offences, while slightly less penalties are given to builders that committed the offences at a standard of strict liability. These changes will also give the VBA more power to commence proceedings to make sure that builders are complying to the new regulations, and also allow them to enforce the new offences to non-complying builders. Amending the Building Act will state that the VBA has grounds to immediately suspend the registration of a registered building practitioner if they're deemed to have committed one of the new offences. Now, these changes are being made after the Porter Davis collapse, which exposed loopholes in the Building Act, which some builders have been taking advantage of. I will say that the Building Act has not changed since 1995, and so it's good that we're making changes now. These new offences and amendments to the Act will make sure that it stamps out this awful behaviour and creates penalties to deter anyone from repeating these disgraceful acts. Actions from companies like Porter Davis continue to give a bad name to our domestic home builders. It's a reputation that most don't deserve, and they're doing the right thing by the law and aren't taking advantage of people who want to own their own home. Now, with this bill, we've done our due diligence and consulted with multiple organisations and government departments to ensure collaboration and mitigate potential risks. I do note that the Master Builders Victoria have concerns and wish to see further changes to the Act. But we are here today to make changes to close a loophole that has been taken advantage of for too long, Just as a reminder, this is the first part of a suite of reforms that will deliver stronger protections for Victorians building or renovating their home. In addition to that, we have commenced consultation as part of the review of the Domestic Building Contracts Act of 1995, looking to improve safeguards for consumers when entering building contracts. We have also released the Stage 2 report of the expert panel reviewing our building system. Now, this came with 14 recommendations to deliver greater accountability, improve insurance coverage, and strengthen compliance and enforcement. In short, after there has been further consultation with the building industry, consumer groups, and looking at those 4 recommendations, it will allow for decisions to be made and possible further legislation to improve building practices and make sure people who've worked hard for their deposits aren't left out when things go wrong through no fault of their own. These changes also come at a very important time as we are on the way to building 800,000 homes over the next decade. Having made these amendments, home buyers can be confident that if something goes wrong with their builder, that they will be insured and they won't lose their hard-earned deposits. We're also supporting the building industry by providing them with a huge pipeline of work through our landmark housing statement. As I mentioned previously, we've set an ambitious target of 800,000 homes to be built within the next decade, and that we need to provide buyers with certainty that their dreams won't come crashing down because a builder didn't want to follow the correct rules. We want the building industry to have confidence in the government as we provide a strong list of works heading into the future, but we also need that confidence in return when putting deposits down. Young people are having to sacrifice and save more money than ever for a house deposit, so we need to make sure that they're protected heading into the future, and this bill is the start of that process. My wife and I like to walk around my little city or little township where we live, and a couple of years ago a new development was being built, and once they put the roads in, my wife and I would walk around those roads because they were very quiet. They didn't stay quiet for long because people started building. And it was really interesting watching the process of houses go up. The land was cleared, foundations were laid, slabs were laid, and walls, thank you very much, ma'am. But in that process, I noticed one house stopped completely. Nothing happened. Around it, other houses sprung up, the walls were made, the roof trusses were put in, painting was done, and I also noticed another house was locked up. Nothing happening, it was dirty, there was plastic and fencing, it was very unfortunate. You could see that there was some demise going on. Eventually the whole suburb sprung up, and with lots of wonderful different houses. There were gardens and grass, and cars out the front and kids playing, and yet there was another house that just looked like a ghost house. So there was probably 4% of the buildings in that area didn't happen. Around them, there were beautiful houses where people had their dreams come true. Their families were living there, they had everything they wanted, but there were 3 houses there where people's dreams had been destroyed. They'd lost their money, they'd lost their dream, they had to go back to the drawing board, and it's such a disgrace. And this bill is working towards stopping that. And it's really unfortunate that those on the other side, the opposition, have moved a reasoned amendment asking us to delay the bill, and go back and do a review. Basically do nothing. More talk, no action. More talk, no action. Of course the opposition have form on this. In 2022 they opposed a bill to strengthen the oversight of the building industry. And before supporting virtually the exact same bill 6 months later, after the election. So, I mean, let's get this done. Why delay this bill? One of the most important jobs, and we all know this, one of the most important jobs we have in this place is to protect Victorians from bad business practices. People have worked too hard for their deposits to be taken away because a builder knowingly does the wrong thing. We've started the process for building reform to protect Victorians, and this is only the beginning. And I ask those in the opposition to stand up, support your constituents, and don't allow your constituents to lose their dream of owning a home. That's not fair. I will always do what's fair. I commend this bill to the House.
Order. Before